This is just an unbelievable story. After months and months of wrangling, trying to avoid providing call records to the House committee investigating the January 6th Trump riots, the Trump White House, the former White House, finally provided the call records to the January 6th committee. Great, right? I mean, what delightful. They've got the information they need. No. The January 6th call logs provided by Trump to the committee have a 7-hour gap on January 6th. The key hours during which it is crucial and critical to understand who was Trump speaking to. Now, there's a second layer to this, which is they may have had phone calls that they never put in the log. So there's kind of two layers of accountability. The first is give us the logs so we can see who you spoke to. That assumes the logs are accurate. And I would not assume that with this former administration. But the next part of it is, of course, well, do the calls even reflect what they should reflect? Washington Post report, very good report by Bob Woodward and Robert Costa. January 6th White House logs given to the House show a 7-hour gap. Wow. The House Select Committee is now investigating whether it has the full record and whether Trump communicated that day through back channels, phones of aides, or personal disposable phones. Now, Trump is claiming he doesn't know what a burner phone is. I don't believe that for a second. We're going to get to that in a moment. Read the whole article. We're linking to it. Internal White House records from the day of the attack that were turned over to the House Select Committee show a gap in Trump's phone logs of 7 hours and 37 minutes, including, what a surprise, the period when the building was being violently assaulted, according to documents obtained by the Washington Post and CBS News. The lack of an official White House notation of any calls placed to or by Trump for 457 minutes. Look at the time here, from 11:17 a.m. to 6:54 p.m. I'm trying to think, what was going on during that time? Oh, right. That was exactly when the Capitol was taken over by violent insurrectionists attempting to overturn the results of the election. Well, during that time, we don't have the logs. That means the committee has no record of his phone conversations as his supporters descended on the Capitol, battled overwhelmed police, and forcibly entered the building, prompting lawmakers and VP Mike Pence to flee for safety. The 11 pages of records, which consist of the president's official daily diary and the White House switchboard call logs, were turned over by the National Archives earlier this year. The records show Trump was active on the phone for part of the day, documenting conversations with at least 8 people in the morning and 11 in the evening. But there is this 7-hour gap that stands in stark contrast to the extensive public reporting about phone calls he had with allies during the attack. We know he spoke to Mike Lee, he spoke to Tommy Tuberville, he spoke to Kevin McCarthy, and many others. So in essence, they didn't really turn over the records in that we don't actually have the records, or the White House doesn't, during those key moments. Now, I want to talk about this burner thing. This is now from a CBS News article. Remember that this was a kind of joint report from Washington Post and CBS. The House panel is now investigating whether Trump communicated through back channels, meaning he could have used other people's phones or personal disposable phones known as burner phones. Look at this. In a statement Monday night, Trump said, "I have no idea what a burner phone is. To the best of my knowledge, I have never even heard the term." Does anybody believe that? Does anybody believe that Donald Trump doesn't know what a burner phone is? I know he's not the brightest, but there is no doubt that he knows what a burner phone is. The stuff that Trump has been up to for so long. Now, is it possible he doesn't know it by that name? He knows it as a disposable phone. I don't know, guys. Maybe. But this is not believable. And when we talk about, remember when we spoke about the Ukraine fiasco that led to the second impeachment? Remember when we spoke about the entire Russia probe, quite frankly? As I've said before, if from the beginning of the suspicions about Russia, the Mueller investigation, the entire thing, much of what took place was self-inflicted harm done by Trump. If Trump hadn't gone public and tweeted all sorts of things that attracted more attention to the story, if Trump hadn't gone overboard in his denials, and then it came out, actually, they met with all of these Russian individuals and all these different things, the investigation would never have become what it was. And similarly, when it comes to January 6th, it is increasingly plausible that had Trump just cooperated and not called attention to the fact that he's obviously trying to cover up the full scope of what he did and what he said and who he spoke to that day, this also likely would not be as big as it is. Because, to be perfectly frank, my opinion is whatever is in those missing 7.5 hours, it's probably not good. But if you don't have the contents of those calls, you have a circumstantial case at best, most likely. And again, the fact that there is a 7.5 hour gap in the records at exactly the key time that's being investigated is just putting more of a focus on that time and suggesting that Donald Trump knows that he did something wrong. So I'm not suggesting Trump is innocent, but what I am suggesting is that the cover-up after the fact actions are putting more of a spotlight. When you don't give 7.5 hours of logs, you're saying these are the 7.5 hours that you want to focus on. Now, unfortunately, and I know we continue to have this discussion, you and I, in the audience, it's not looking to me like there are going to be any consequences here. Number one, there seems to be no willingness on the part of any prosecutor to actually look at criminal charges for any of what's taken place. And number two, listen, Trump is pretty Teflon. It's just the reality. And he's thinking about running again in 2024. There's the possibility that even running again may be part of keeping himself out of trouble by being back in power. And I remain pessimistic about accountability here. But in the last 24 hours, just incredible stories and a 7.5 hour gap in the phone records. If you believe that we are finally getting to where it's overwhelming, there are going to be consequences, let me know. You can find me on Twitter at dpacman and let me know what you think is coming. One of our longtime sponsors is Vincero Collective. If you don't know Vincero yet, it's the place to go for quality watches, sunglasses, and more. Serious style, undeniable quality, and total versatility put Vincero really at the top of the game, and their newest watch release is no exception. It's the Argo Automatic. It spotlights everything I love about Vincero. I got the Argo Automatic in frost white. This is a dive watch, which is, of course, a staple in the watch world, but I really think Vincero found a way to make this one stand out. I love the gradient blue accent of the hour markers against the solid white face. I really love all of their watches, and I own a bunch, but the Argo is probably my favorite so far. Vincero sunglasses and jewelry and other accessories are awesome too. An excellent way to elevate any outfit. Vincero Collective is giving my audience 15% off all products and free shipping. Go to vincerocollective.com/Pacman and use the code Pacman. The link is down below.